Hey everybody, it's been a while since I've done a video, so I wanted to get back with you here. I think the last video I was starting a new bike project, a new XR project, and it must have been a year ago. And since then we've done a lot of testing. We haven't been racing because of the pandemic problem, but we've done all kinds of testing and things are coming along really good. We've actually picked up about half a second on the track, something like that, on a smaller track, which was really impressed me. A bunch of small changes made a big difference in the end. But now it's winter time and I'm back building another motor, a brand new motor, almost entirely new. There's a few used parts on here, but I'll get to that in a minute. But basically I'm just mocking it up at this point, and I wanted to tell about why it was important to mock up a motor before you actually take it apart and put the crankshaft in and send the heads out and get them machined and that kind of thing. So I think at one point I did a video where I showed that you had to machine the cases just to fit them in the frame, and so this set of cases I've actually had in the frame that I'm intending to put them into, so that's being done. And now I'm just I spent about a week on this motor now at evenings, and just kind of putting everything together and making sure that I've got everything to start with, but also that the parts are actually going to fit, because these motors never went down an assembly line, so they are hand-built motors. So this one I'm just fitting and filing and messing around, and I'm making sure that that the cases sit together nice with a nice gasket surface. I want to make sure that there's no gaps in there. I've had cases where a rod's gone through them or something and you've had to remachine this area in here. I've had cases where the cam cover wouldn't even fit on because it got smashed into the ground so hard that this piece was bent, So that's really what you're doing here. You're making sure that everything you've bought will fit. For instance, I got a brand new, this thing here, brand new in the Harley package. It didn't even fit in a brand new head, in a brand new rocker box. The thread had a little burr on it or something, and it's got some chrome on the outside. So I ended up having to put a used one in here, which is fine. It works. But that's why you're doing this. You're making sure that everything, whether it needs to be filed, machined, remachined, whatever. Every motor I take a little booklet and I put in the specs of the motor up here, the serial number and just information on the motor, and then at the back I've got sort of a little job list that I run. Take a little off of here, stuff that needs to be done. I got to get some new main bearing retaining screws, that kind of thing. I go through these motors and I tap everything, even if it's a brand new set of cases. I still run a brand new tap through. I buy some new taps every time I build a motor, and I go and I tap every little, just to make sure there's no burrs in there, because that's the last thing that you want, is to have something. You wash this thing out 3 times and then you go to build this motor and you got some little fragment of aluminum sitting in there. It's like, so, and speaking of that, use white rags. White rags show up everything. This motor was all built almost entirely out of new parts, but there still was dirt on this thing. Where's that rag? It was around here somewhere, and just covered in, just covered in dirt, just from the thing sitting around, sitting on the shelf. Some stuff brand new in Harley boxes, and it's still got a little bit of grime on that can come off it. So do as much of that as you can while you're putting this thing together, while you're mocking this up. I put on every fitting, make sure everything's quite right, and then I take it all back apart. And so I fit as much in here as I could fit. Now it's going to come apart. I've got a used part on here because these things are notorious for just not working very well. This dimension from here to here is kind of critical. So sometimes I've had new ones and they've been welded just a little off here, and they hang up your shifting. So I'm actually gonna send this one out and get a bunch of new ones made up from it. So all of that stuff's important. Use cam cover, mostly because it's a nice billet cover, and I really like this one. They're nice and strong. I've got a brand new one here, Harley magnesium one, but they tend to break through here or through here in this area. The bearings can break right out of these things. I've had 2 or 3 come through that are been broken, and I'm like, I don't want to be going down that road. Such an expensive motor. So I'm going to use this Law Will billet one. Everything else pretty much is new, but I use lightly used camshafts if I can get them, rather than new ones, and lightly used main shafts for the counter shaft, or for the main shaft for the sprocket, if I can get one, because the new ones, I don't trust their hardening. They were notorious for having stuff through hardened, and then they have a broken camshaft, broken main shaft. I've had a broken main shaft, and then you don't finish the race. So those are 2 areas that I tend to try to use used stuff. Check over all your gaskets. When I put these things together, I check over everything. I had a gasket the other day, and it was missing. It didn't have this hole punched out on it. And with this hole, that's where the oil comes through to feed your crankshaft. So you want to make sure that the gasket's actually finished. I threw it out, but the gasket didn't even have that hole there. So it was going to starve the crank from oil. Everything's got to be checked 2-3 times on these things. You want to make sure everything's exact. So, that being said, I got my little job list of things that have to be remachined. For instance, right down here, where this cylinder goes in, brand new cylinder, brand new cases, but right down in here, I got to take just a little bit off of the fin. I just got to file a little bit off of there so that it'll fit in there, and then you'll get a nice proper seat of the gasket. All of these things. I'm going to send these off to a friend, and he's going to either machine them down or give me a set that's already been machined down, because they're brand new. He's probably going to want them for one of his original bikes, but I want machined down ones because they're about a pound lighter. By the time you take off a little bit of this and mill a little bit here and run shorter bolts, they end up saving me about a pound on the engine. So on a race engine like this, I want to save weight wherever I can. So, but people that want original, they want something like this that's never been messed around with. So other than that, it's pretty straightforward. I'm ready to take this thing apart and fit the crankshaft in, clean it up one last time. But I just wanted to show you a few things to make sure, it's real important to do a mock-up of these things. I think I have to do a little bit of a trim in here, just so that these heads don't clang together. When they start to heat up, they're going to actually kind of hit each other or ring on the fins there. So I want to make sure that that's just filed up a little bit. What else? I use computer air to spray out all the little crevices, and it's only because I'm doing this down in my basement of my house, and I really just don't want an air compressor and be hearing that all the time. So you can buy these things at the surplus store, but computer air will just kind of, just a little something that I do. If you don't have a parts book, get a parts book, because it shows the length of every screw. You want to make sure you got the proper screws in here, because anything you're missing at this point will cause you a whole lot of time later on when you're trying to source the stuff out, and then you're going to be rushing your motor when you've got it already put back together, and you're going to be trying to rush, and it's not going to be cool. So you want to make sure that you got as much of the meat and potatoes stuff done right up front, so that you're not chasing your tail later on. So get yourself a parts book. I think I got a couple extra of these. My daughter's been selling them lately, so maybe get a hold of me if you want one. Got a couple left, but they have, even though you know you can't buy anything from Harley anymore, it still at least gives you the right part number if you're going to go search for stuff on eBay or whatever, and it also gives little hints as far as the thread sizes and you know, I look at this all the time because there's things in here I'm learning all the time still, even after all the bikes I've been working on. I'm still always learning, and you're gonna always be learning. But oh, and that's something I just, this motor, while I was mocking it up, I learned something I didn't know before, and that was that on these things, these little lifter bodies, for instance, there are some lifter bodies a little bit older. This portion right here, they're about 630 thousandths of an inch, and on the later ones, this portion right here is about 700 thou. So that means that this can go up, raise up in here about 70 thou higher for a cam that might have just a little bit more of a lobe on it, that kind of thing. So it's just something to watch out for. Make sure that everything that you've bought along the way, that it all matches, that you know, you sure don't want to have, you know, some really nice high lift Lowell cams or something, and then it all of a sudden will only go like to there or something, and then it hangs up and tries to bend your push rod, you know. So anyway, just a few things, but like I say, the biggest thing is double check, triple check everything, because it's going to save you a whole lot of grief and a whole lot of money down the road, and a whole lot of time too, probably. So, and that's all I really wanted to say. But this motor, I'm going to take it apart again. I've got new pistons ready to go in. I'm going to send the heads to my friend. He's going to do a little number and set the valves in there, and put it all together with new seats and all that jazz. And yeah, it's going to be good. I'm excited about this one. I'm going to put this one in a nice half-miler frame, and we're going to beat it to pieces this summer. So anyway, thanks a lot, and hopefully we'll get a few more videos out of some of the other stuff we've been working on. So see ya.